where the poor guy, he was making about $5.5 million a year. I think his name was Sharon Moore. Is that his name? And I am an Ohio State Buckeye. You guys have seen me wearing my Buckeye stuff, but even as a Buckeye, I do not I am not happy about this at all. I feel that it's a problem, right? It's crazy because actually, what's interesting is the Michigan State head coach was also a black man who also was fired, from what I understand, for something involving a workplace relationship where he was accused of sleeping with a lady. And in both cases, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think both of the women were melanin deficient. I think in both cases, you had a black man sleeping with a woman who was melanin deficient. We can't make fun of them for their disability. I'm kidding. And it really just took us back to just these really interesting thoughts in terms of economic lessons regarding the high cost of interracial relationships. But then again, maybe if everybody had been black, maybe it would have been the same outcome. So maybe race didn't have much to do with it. I don't know. It's up to you to decide that. But I thought that given that we love our sons and many of us have black sons and black grandsons, that it might be worth it to have guarding, like just sort of like how the world works. And I don't know. Maybe their parents never warned them, or I really suspect that in some cases you get to the point where you get real comfortable, like you kind of forget, like, oh, maybe I'm not black. Maybe my parents were lying to me when they told me I was black. And then you get that Paul Mooney wake up call where they're like, no, you're still black. You're still a Negro. You're just a rich Negro, right? Like, and so no, you're OJ. Yeah, you're still black. Um, and so let me kind of break this down. I'm gonna make this official. I'm not gonna make this just me gossiping about another man's situation. I want to make it into an economic conversation, economic lesson, because I like to talk about the things that are real, that are really happening in the world. And I think it's very important that we understand this because a lot of you that have sons, you got to warn your sons. These workplaces do not play. They will come get you if you are sleeping with somebody you work with. And here's the reason why it's just I don't like it. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't like the whole like sexual policing, like just saying like because you had sex with someone you work with, that's means you should lose everything. And I'm always curious, like, does everybody lose everything, or is it just the more powerful male that loses everything? Like, if everybody's gonna lose everything, then everybody should lose everything. But a lot of times, if you see a black man in power, sleeping with a woman that he works with or something, they don't really spend as much time talking about the person who also chose to sleep with him. They'll just talk about him and they'll say, well, because you're powerful, then it's your responsibility. But I get that, but I think at the same time, if you're really honest about attraction, um, women are not usually looking for, to sleep with a guy in the male room. They're not looking to sleep with the guy at the bottom of the totem pole. They're looking at the guy at the top of the totem pole. They're looking at the powerful guy, and you just see one multi-million-dollar tragedy after another. Tavis Smiley and what happened with him, with PBS. If you remember that how that went down. I think that there's something to talk about. And again, you can have your own judgment on it. I know it's complicated, so I'm not here to tell you what to think about it. I'm just here to tell you what I think about it, and then we can think about what we all think about it. Okay, does that make sense? Can we agree? And can we agree to disagree on some stuff? And if we disagree, we still love each other. Give me a yes in the chat if we can disagree and still love each other. That's what an intellectual conversation should be, in my opinion. All right. By the way, can you hear me? Somebody said they can't hear me. Give me a quick yes. Let me know that I'm coming through okay, that my audio's good. I just want to make sure I'm good. Okay. All right. So here's the first thing that's interesting to me. According to research, 22% of married or long-term couples in the United States met at work. Like, okay, so that's the first thing. 22 to 25% of all married couples or people in long-term relationships met on their job. So when you ban like if we catch you sleeping with somebody at work, you gonna lose everything. That right there is like, come on, man. I'm not saying that it can't be done. I'm not saying there aren't reasons for it. But Lord, that right there is enough to. If I'm talking to my son, I'd be like, look, son, just start your own business. Like, just if you got, I mean, yeah, we got a son. We got a son who's he's 6'9". He's very smart and he's very handsome. Everywhere he goes, all the girls, I didn't even know, I didn't even, it wasn't until I was about 35 that I realized how much women like tall guys. I didn't know that. I thought that being 5'8" was as good as being 6'3". But then I talked to 6'3" guys and they're like, oh yeah, women are everywhere. I'm like, wait, I had to work to get a woman. But then I got money and money makes you taller, right? I told you that money and my PhD made me like now I might be shoot, I might be a 7-footer. Oh no. Anyway, I'm playing. But anyway, don't tell my wife I'm not flirting with nobody or nothing. So here's the thing though. So he all these girls, we went to college campuses and the girls are like, and we're like, oh okay, Lord Jesus. And and the thing I had to talk to him about, to be just quite frank, is I said, look, your natural instinct is to be attracted to women and for women to be attracted to you. You're tall, you're handsome, and you're smart. And you get some money, it's a wrap. And so you're going to be attracted to them. And I said, the problem for you is that because you're black, you're going to probably have to pay a really high penalty for that. The world loves you when they love you and they hate you when they hate you. Someone that loves you 1 minute, if they're not happy with the outcome, like if she wanted, like let's say you meet a lot of women and half of them want to marry you and want you as their boyfriend, even though it's not mathematically possible for you to be a boyfriend to all the women. Well, someone's going to get mad and then turn you into some sort of a predator. That could happen. I've seen that happen, and it can be a problem for you. So we had to have a real conversation, and I didn't know how far I should go with that because my father's conversation with me when I took the job at Syracuse University was, he said, don't you F nothing on this campus. He said, do not sleep with anybody on the campus at all. Don't sleep with any coworkers. Definitely don't sleep with any students. Don't do any of that. And I just said, okay, yes, sir. It's like that, right? And now in hindsight, there would be nice women I would meet that, maybe a new black professor in Syracuse ain't exactly full of like all different, it's not full of like lots of dating options if you're black. If you're a black woman, you're just not really gonna find a lot of men that might fit the criteria. It's one of the worst places in the world. And here I was, a single black male down the hall, and she's attractive, and I'm like looking at her like, wow, that's a pretty lady. In another universe, I'd probably say something to her, but I'm not about in any way to throw away everything I've worked for just for whatever it is that might happen between us. So what happens is, some men, I don't know about all men, but men who want to be disciplined, they just shut down. They say no, nope, you ain't taking away what I got. And that just kind of, and I don't know if that, I feel like that was a little extreme, honestly, but I'm glad, I don't regret it because it protected my career. Now I think ultimately this is what I'm really wondering about. It's like, how's this going to work if 25% of all long-term relationships are formed at work, and you're basically saying that if you have a long-term relationship, you're at risk of public humiliation, losing your job, losing your career, being blackballed from the industry. What does that really mean for dating? I don't know. I don't know what it means. Thank God I'm not, a 25-year-old trying to figure it out. I'm a 54-year-old who's figured some things out, and I'm married to my wife, and we work together, and so I can go in her office and just say whatever I want. I ain't never gonna get written up by HR, because there is no HR. We are the HR, and or the HNICs, and so ultimately, it's complex, right? So here's another thing: among people who have ever been in an office romance, 1/3 report that the relationship became long term, and about a quarter say that it led to marriage. So these relationships are not just office flings. They're not just people cheating on their partners. It's people that really like each other. And it makes perfect sense. All the studies show that, like, when you're working with somebody every day and you have a common passion and you're communicating constantly and you have this, these shared objectives that you're pursuing together, that's really a metaphor for getting busy. Like, you're creating together. Like, you're really, it drives a type of passion and connectivity that, unfortunately, capitalism is trying to convince us that this connectivity shouldn't exist. And I think that that's insane. I think it's crazy. Next, younger professionals are shifting patterns. Now, only 10 to 12% of Gen Z expect to find a partner at work. That's because young kids have learned, they've grown up in a society that has said romances are off limits 90% of the time. I mean, sure, there's exceptions. You got to report it to HR, but who really wants to do that? Oh yeah, me and so slept together. Now I want to go report it to HR. Do you know? Come on, how many? Seriously, let me know if you know what I'm talking about. How many times have you ever had an experience that you didn't exactly want to report to HR? Anybody ever have that? Anybody out there? Any secret lovers? Yeah, that's what we are. Trying to go to work and have our sex, but we don't want to report it to HR because it's embarrassing as hell. So if you ask me to do that, I'm gonna say F you. All right, anyway, okay. So really, it's like, come on, ain't nobody trying to report their sex life to HR. You know what I mean? That's stupid. That's dumb. See, some of this stuff is see, this is the thing. I know capitalism really well, and I can tell you sometimes capitalism is just stupid. You're wrapping your whole life around the corporate plantation. And another so this is another reason why I think financial security, economic independence, economic intelligence is really important so you can shape your economic circumstances in such a way that you're not sacrificing everything that makes you human just so you can please a company. Do you understand? Like there's so many things that make us human that we naturally want to do, like procreate, be with our kids, like have peace. The corporation gets in the way of a lot of these things, right? And so if you look at this, right, I don't disconnect things like this from the fact that the reproduction rate in America and in most industrialized countries has dropped precipitously to the point where they're worried about becoming extinct. Like they're literally like, oh my God, society's going to collapse because the birth rate's not high enough. Well, that's because you're not creating environments that are conducive for reproduction. It's different. It's similar to when I talk to you guys about financial fertility, which I wrote about in my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. Financial fertility means your money your money can reproduce, but you got to create the right environment, right? Just like growing a plant. You can't grow life in toxic soil. You can't grow a flower in the desert, right? So you can't grow money in an environment that's not conducive to prosperity and financial fertility, just like human beings are not going to be fertile and reproductive if you don't create an environment that's conducive to that. You got to turn on the Marvin Gaye, put some romance in the air, connect people, and then next thing you know, babies come out, right? And that's the same thing. The same thing is true for anything that has a fertility aspect to it, or a reproductive equation connected to it. You have to create the right environment. The corporation's not that environment. They don't really want you having a life, having a family, falling in love with each other. They want you working. That's what they want. They want you to say crazy things like, "Well, I would have got married and had kids, but I wanted to focus on my career." I get it, but come on, what is your career? You gotta you work at you work at T-Mobile. Like, why is T-Mobile more important than your grandkids? Like, I don't understand that. But that's something that's very natural to us because capitalism taught us to think this way. Let's keep going. 40% of employees report having been involved in some type of workplace romance. So, so you're sleeping around, which is, I guess, some type of illegal activity now. But only 5 to 7% say that it involved a direct supervisor or subordinate. So that's good. At least people are smart. They're not, trying to, deliberately sleep with their boss or their subordinate. And I do think that that does make it complex and kind of messy. Right. Women are going to be attracted to the boss, but then when you're sleeping with the boss, that creates leverage that both parties have. It's not just one party or the other. I mean, sure, the boss can say, keep sleeping with me or you're fired. Well, what if the boss isn't that kind of a person? But then the employee can say, give me a promotion or I'm going to tell everybody, I'm going to go tell HR that you slept with me, right? So I've seen it go in both directions. And the idea that the predatory nature of those sorts of relationships is one-sided, that's just a falsehood. That's just not true. But I do think that when you have a subordinate with a superior, if you want to call it that, that just tends to get messy and ugly. And so what I did say to our son was I said, look, if you have a relationship with somebody at your job, you probably want to make sure that it's worth the risk. It's a risky investment. That's what it is. And with a risky investment, you got to think through, investigate before you invest, investigate. make sure that this is somebody that is, where you imagine the worst case scenario. Okay, she goes to HR and says, I forced myself into her life or whatever. Are you prepared to take that risk? And is this the kind of person that you can trust with that sort of decision? And I think that's true for anybody that has something to lose. When you have assets to protect, remember, investors who have assets to protect inherently are supposed to become more conservative. When you have the lead in a football game, the Michigan coach probably understands this. When he has the lead in a game, the offense that you run is different from the offense you run when you're coming from behind. When you have the lead, your goal is not to expand the lead. Your goal is to protect the lead. Your goal is to play conservative. You run the ball, you just throw short passes, you don't take any chances because you've already got the lead. You don't want to mess it up, right? So the same thing is true with asset protection. A couple of rules, a couple of these things I learned from my gangster daddy, because cops are basically gangsters. They're kind of the same thing, just different sides of the law. Is he said a person who has a lot to lose should be careful about entanglements with people who have nothing to lose. So that would go for something a massive investment like who I sleep with, right? If I've got a lot to lose and you've got nothing to lose, then that means that if things go bad, then you can come and destroy everything that I have, right? I've got the reputation, I've got the wealth, or whatever. So you come after my wealth, you come after my reputation, whatever. 'Cause you ain't got nothing for me to take, right? So a lot of times people will say, okay, if I'm going to take this chance, I need to have what's the term? It's in finance. There's a theory that it relates to called the lemon theory. And in the lemon theory, they basically say that when you're investing with somebody, effectively, you want to make sure they got skin in the game too. Like so if you're a vice president and you're worried about your reputation, you might want to go sleep with another vice president who's also worried about their reputation. And then you have mutually assured destruction, which keeps the peace. Like the nuclear, they say that when Russia and the US all have nuclear weapons, they get the weapons not to use them, but to just show that, like, look, if you blow me up, then I'm gonna blow you up, and we all just gonna be blown up, and that's not good for nobody. So you agree, like, look, you don't mess with me, I ain't gonna mess with you, and we'll be straight. And that really is a formula that I think can apply. So, two things I would say, and this is true for investing in general, not just investing your body, but also investing your money, investing your career, investing anything. Two things. One, due diligence, take your time. You jump into stuff. Impulsive investing always ends up bad. Whether you're investing your body or investing your money, if you're impulsive and you just get caught up in the moment, then you're always going to regret it. So investigate before you invest. And then number two is make sure they got something to lose too. If you got a lot to lose, you probably don't want to spend a lot of time around people that have nothing to lose. I don't know. I kind of feel like, I don't know. I kind of wonder about Tupac and stuff. Like I felt like when Tupac became really famous, he was hanging out in places where people wanted to kill him and stuff. And I don't know if that was I would have probably got some security or something. I don't security. I'm not here to speculate on Tupac's life. So let me get back to what we're doing because we all know what Diddy did. So who knows? Maybe security couldn't have protected him from Diddy. All right, so let's move on. Diddy did it. It's alleged. Allegedly. All right, so here, so this coach, his name is Sharon Moore. I don't know how great of a season they were having. I think Michigan had a decent football team. I'm a Buckeye, and I know we beat the snot out of them. That made me happy that day, but I'm not happy about this. He was making $5.5 million a year, and he's gonna lose probably about $20 million. Were they 9-3? Okay, that's pretty. Go Michigan. Yeah, all right. And I like Michigan. Right, Tom Brady's from Michigan, one of my favorite players. Right, it's a great school. I'm kidding. And also academically, by the way, Michigan is in fact, I would almost say that they were considered when I went and got my doctorate at Ohio State. If you'd asked me, which would you rather get your doctorate from, Ohio State or Michigan, I would have picked Michigan. So Michigan, so props to Michigan. Assalamu alaikum. All right. So anyway, so Michigan. So here's the thing. So apparently he was sleeping with a lady and she's melanin deficient. And this fits a pattern. The Michigan State coach, he also lost his job for an interaction with a melanin deficient woman. Shannon Sharp going to be making EBT payments and SNAP payments for the next 40 years to take care of the 20-year-old OnlyFans model who now has more money than like the top 3 or 4 HBCUs combined. I'm kidding. She doesn't, but she's got enough money where she could probably pay the tuition of every student at those schools for like a decade or something. So there's a cost, right? There's a big cost to who you choose to entangle yourself with on your job, and it's very frustrating, I think, for someone who's sensitive about black wealth, because the amounts of money that we're talking about are not small amounts of money, right? These amounts of money are that's generational wealth. I know 1,000 entrepreneurs who would love to have just 1 year of this guy's salary, and they could probably employ 10,000 black people with that money. 5.5 million a year, maybe not 10,000 people, but 5.5 million a year. I would say business and employ, I'd say at least 50 to 100 people with 5.5 million a year, depending on how much they were making per year, right? So you're talking about significant amounts of capital, right? And when capital gets depleted because of poor choices, it just really becomes very frustrating. But at the same time, you have to acknowledge that I think that there could be, I don't know, let me ask you all this. I think there could be a racial bias here. How many of you think that race might have had something to do with this? Do you think race it plays any part in this, or do you think that if he were white and did the same thing, it would have been the same outcome? What do y'all think? Yes or no? Do you think race matters here, or do you think race is like, no, 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 we're making it racial when it's not racial? I think it is racial because it's a black man that has an opportunity that most dream about. Right, most black people dream about the chance to be the coach at Michigan, to make that kind of money. I mean, Lord, I mean, that's a lot of money, right? So maybe I think race does play a part in it, and it's definitely racially interesting because he's black, and you're talking about the word poor. Poor. Why are we poor? Well, poor stands for what? Passing over opportunities repeatedly. So when you make mistakes that cause you to lose your wealth, you're passing over an opportunity repeatedly. The amount of money he was making would have taken care of him, his kids, kids, and his kids. And so you get those opportunities, rather than being willy nilly about it and kind of just throwing caution to the wind. It's actually better to become very astute and alert and careful and say, whoa, we got the bag right now. We have secured the freaking bag. Let's make sure we don't drop the bag. We're gonna hold this with both arms and make sure that we're extremely careful, like we're holding, a dozen eggs in this hand, and five glasses of wine in this hand on the tray, and we're gonna walk real careful. You have to be conservative, and so when I look at this, it makes me think about. I remember an interview with Allen Iverson, and Allen Iverson, I'm real happy for him. First off, Allen Iverson was one of the greatest pound for pound basketball players I ever saw in my life. Just extraordinary. John Morant reminds me of Allen Iverson, and I really wonder if Allen Iverson's ever sat down with John Morant and let him know, like, hey man, you're sitting on generational wealth. Don't do what I did. Because if you look at the history of Allen Iverson's life, Allen Iverson was a guy who also had generational wealth, but a lot of that wealth disappeared from just insane choices in terms of spending habits, gambling habits, alcoholism. Right, he just stopped drinking. Right, he announced that he just stopped drinking. He's been sober for 6 months. Good for him. I think that's amazing. And I said to my son the other day, I said, I wonder when black men are gonna figure out that alcohol ain't nothing but poison that will fuck up your life in a 30 in like 2 seconds flat. Like I wonder when black men are just talk to my son about this when he's 4, so he ain't gotta drink for 40 years and damn near kill himself and make a bunch of horrible choices, maybe get arrested, maybe shoot somebody at the club, maybe get up in a sexual assault type situation. Right? And instead of going through 40 years of hell and mistakes and bad choices and losses of generational wealth and opportunity, perhaps incarceration or death or STDs or whatever horrible things happen with alcohol, maybe I just talk to him when he's young, right? Maybe when he's 4, I say, hey, look, if you want to have a good life, don't touch this stuff with it. There's many, many ways. Let's work instead of working on teaching you how to be a thug and a drinker. I'm gonna show you how to have mental health so that you don't need alcohol to be happy or to have a good time. Right? A lot of people they drink the alcohol because they're covering something up or because they needed this liquid courage, right? Well, let me show you how to have real courage. That's better than liquid courage. That way your courage ain't in a bottle. You ain't got to go buy your courage. You got your courage. It's already there, right? Maybe we help you with your mental health so you can learn how to have fun in natural ways. There's so many natural ways. Or like when I was talking to our little one, I was explaining to her about like depression and anxiety, and I said, yeah, a lot of these white women, these little white liberal women, they're all a lot of them are diagnosed with mental health disorders, and they're now finding that they're overprescribed psychiatric medication. And it's not just white women, but it's kind of a white woman thing. And they're taking all these pills. There's different classes. There's two SSRIs and another class. And they're finding, surprise, surprise, that whenever they go in and they say, "Oh, I'm a little bit sad," the doctor's like, "Here, take this pill. Here, take this pill." And then when you go in and you say, "Well, the pills are having side effects," they'll say, "Oh, well, you just need more pills, or here's a different pill to handle the side effect from the first pill." And that's capitalism. Capitalism will feed you pills. And I said, I wonder what would happen if somebody just said, "Well, how about we, before we get to the pills, because some people might need their meds. I ain't trying to say that the meds are always bad, but how about before we get to the pills, we cycle through all the different ways that you can naturally fight depression. Like there's so many natural things you can do. Get plenty of sleep, exercise, release those endorphins, right? Think happy thoughts and conscious positivity. Write down all the ways that you're blessed every day. And before you start complaining, just write down all the ways you're blessed. And those little things that works for a lot of people. It may not work for everybody, right? So if you try all those things and none of that works, then maybe you got to go take a pill. Again, chemical imbalance is a very real thing, but the idea that we sort of go straight to the pill is a problem, right? So you have to, in my opinion, if you're talking about raising kids and grandkids and stuff and mentors and nephews and nieces to be ready for a capitalist society, you got to kind of hip them to the game. And you kind of have to make sure that you understand something that's really important about investing. An ounce of prevention really is worth a pound of cure. The amount of energy it takes to prevent a problem is like 1/1000th of the amount of energy it takes to overcome a problem. So Alvin Iverson sort of fixing a broken life that he's lived for the last 50 years, the amount of energy it would take, if it was even possible to do, is going to be much, much higher than the amount of energy it would have taken for a couple people to really sit him down when he was 12 years old and say, "Hey, you're going to have a great life. You're really talented. Let's make sure you're ready. Let's make sure that you're prepared for everything that's in front of you." Mike Tyson, if you look at Mike Tyson and the remarkable job he's done in reinventing himself and becoming a better man, what if Mike Tyson had had people around him to help him do this when he was 17, 18 years old and able to knock a grown man out in 30 seconds? Like, imagine what kind of man Mike Tyson would have been with just mentorship, guidance. I mean, real mentorship, not mentorship on how to box, right? That's important, but that's not all, right? It's like, oh, how do you box in the game of life, right? You're gonna get punched in the mouth in life too. Can you come back from that too? Let's talk about that, right? So I personally think that when I look at this and you see mistakes costing people the bag, I think we have to ask in our culture, do we have an energy, do we have a commitment culturally to really, 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 really hipping our kids to the game and making sure that every mistake that we have, that it is capitalized as an asset. See, here's the thing: when you make mistakes, your mistakes can either be assets or liabilities. They can either be capitalized or they can be expensed. This is how finances work in accounting, right? So an expense is when you spend money and you just lose it and you have less money because you made the expense. A capitalization is where you spend money, you give something up, but you're benefiting from it, right? Like investing in buying a building is very different from me taking my money and going on vacation or buying a bunch of clothes or whatever, or going out to eat. Right. So ultimately, when you make mistakes, when you pay a high cost, you say, damn, I had $5 million and I blew it. That's a big loss. But then that loss can actually become the gain for somebody else. It can be capitalized as a lesson. I learned my best lessons from people who made a lot of mistakes. So I think that there's got to be some point. We're circling back on the Michigan coach. I think there's got to be a point where we start having real conversations with young black men about what happens when you are sleeping around and you're not thinking about who you're sleeping with. And this is in contrast. This is the battle is that you're fighting against an entire culture built around teaching black men, young black men, to make irresponsible decisions, ruin their lives, and then feeling bad and saying, "Oh, racism did it." Racism did not make you put your penis in that woman's vagina. I'm sorry, man. It didn't. It didn't. No, you did that. You chose to do that. And so at the end of the day, when are we going to start having these honest conversations? Hey, and I don't think that we have enough of those conversations because it keeps on happening over and over and over again. And when it happens, and it's a high profile black man, it's very unfortunate because millions of dollars gets lost. He didn't just lose $5 million a year. And 20 million over his contract. He probably lost 100 million, 150 million in terms of what that money would have become like over time if that money had been invested and grown and nurtured and protected and built other opportunities for him. But instead, it all disappeared and it slipped into some white woman's hoo-ha, right? And that to me is a problem, right? That money, it ain't worth it. I don't, I just don't understand it. But I do understand it because if you study psychology, you'll know that impulsive decisions and dopamine driven activities can sometimes disrupt the rest of your life. You pay a very high price for what they call in economics, they call it hyperbolic discounting. Hyperbolic discounting is where you make a decision and you're not thinking about the long-term consequences of that decision because you're focused on the instant gratification. So really teaching kids delayed gratification at an early age is probably the most important lesson that you'll ever teach them when it comes to wealth. People that master delayed gratification early are very successful in almost every area of life. If they measure that in the 5-year-old children, the 5-year-olds who can delay gratification become more successful, they're healthier, they're wealthier, they're able to accomplish whatever they want. So if you want your kids to get a great lesson from you, teach them delayed gratification, patience. Like to pass up, you'll make a sacrifice now so you can have more later. That's all you're really teaching them actually at that point is you're teaching them investing. In case you don't know, all investing is it's delayed gratification. All right. So what I want to do is I want to read. One of you sent in your Blackwell story, and I mentioned I want to acknowledge one of your Blackwell stories each day if I can, if I remember to. Sometimes I'll forget, so maybe you can remind me if I forget. But I want to talk about you and those of you that are in here and what you're doing. I like hearing how you're applying these principles, what changes are happening in your family, what moves you're making. I like action. I like action and results. That's what we want, not just a bunch of talking, not just a bunch of like hooray, hooray, action and results. Okay. So I'm going to read this. This is from Kevin Davenport. Kevin says, I was retired early in 2017 at 59 years old. In June 2018, I started managing my own 401k. In 2021, I started with options. As of December 2025, my 401k balance has more than doubled. Wow. Wow. Everybody shout out Kevin Davenport. Kevin, if you're here, say something in the chat because you deserve to be honored for that. I love that. So double this 401k. He says, I've had many instructors. However, you are the one I trust the most. Thank you. I'm honored by that. And the one I listen to the most. I have enrolled in Prime 2 times. I still get value from the Prime course with stock picks and the fast cash action plans. Good. I'm glad to hear that. I also have attended the last 2 A, B, and C conferences and got some insights into crypto investing. I enjoy your financial awareness class. I'm in a position to share my knowledge with my family and friends. Thank you for all that you do. Be one. All right. So shout out Kevin Davenport. Everybody type Kevin in the chat. And I don't know if Kevin's here or not, but man, that's beautiful, brother. I'm very happy to hear that. So yeah, these are results. This is what I'm talking about. Like this is the win. That's the dream. Like, if you want to know what I wake up and dream about every day, it's Kevin and people like Kevin and just the adjustments because Kevin isn't the only beneficiary from what he's doing. I bet you Kevin has family members, he has kids, maybe grandkids or something like that. He's when Kevin passes away, which hopefully won't be for another 50 years, when he transitions to the next level, he graduates to heaven, somebody's going to benefit 40 years from now from the choices Kevin made right now. And I want you to be able to see that, right? If you'd had, imagine if in 1925, instead of 2025, imagine it's 1925 and you have somebody in your family who really takes on investing in generational wealth in 1925 and says, I'm going to make sure my family's good. And they do what Kevin did. They make that transition and then they leave their wealth to you and it grows across a couple of generations. You're talking about $100 million family at that point. You really are. I mean, really, someone who took this average income and was invested it consistently in 1925 and used the power of time and compound interest by 1975, that wealth would be in the millions. By 2025, that's another 50 years on top of the first 50 years. Do you know how much money you can grow if you let money compound for 100 years? Oh my God. It's crazy. It's crazy. That you literally can have a $250 million family, maybe a $500 million. Like so this is where wealth comes from. So Kevin is doing it, man. That's what we want. We want more Kevins in the world. Kevin, 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 Kevin. Okay. I'm done. So thank you for letting me be a little manic right now. I'm just excited. This pumps me up. All right. So by the way, if you want to join us for stock options, you can go to drboyceprime.com. Feel free to go there. Also, we have financial workbooks for kids. I don't know if you guys remember that or know that or not, but we cover every grade band with the workbook. So if you want to teach your kids about wealth in your house, turn your house into a university. Feel free to use our resources to get that done. They're discounted now. So financialworkbooks.com. So if you could type that in the chat, I'd appreciate it. Financialworkbooks.com. time. They make great Christmas gifts as well. All right, so let me read a couple of things about this Michigan coach in terms of what a few financial theories you can learn from that connect to what's happened here. Number one, there's something called signaling theory from a guy named Spence in 1973. And effectively, the argument would be that when you lose a high value contract, it shows the economic cost of reputational risk. And what does that mean? Well, the theory basically says that employers judge you by signals you send on your reliability. So if your signal gets damaged, if you say, hey, I'm the competent coach, I'm the reliable guy, and then they find out that you're sleeping with your employee, then that can cause a bad signal, which instantly reduces your market value. So if you were to look at this coach as a stock, then his stock price plummeted when Michigan found out that he's sleeping with the employees, because that can get complicated for the university. Not that I agree with the decision in its entirety, but rules are rules, right? What are you going to do? Number two, and here's the other thing too. I mean, you can sleep with people that don't work at your job. Like, you're the coach of Michigan, you got millions of dollars in the bank. I'm sure somebody will go on a date with you, man. It ain't gotta be Misty that works in the office. All right, so number two, being fired for cause can reveal how some companies called asymmetric information. They have safeguards against what they call asymmetric information, which is linked to another theory called principal agent theory. And so here's what it kind of links to, and I'll explain it. So basically, organizations write contracts that are designed to basically reduce their risk that an employee has some hidden skeletons in their closet that can harm them later, right? So this is something to think about when you write a contract. And principal agent theory might connect to that. So you have the principal, which is the person that maybe has the assets and the resources, something to lose. And then you have the agent that is in a position of what they call fiduciary responsibility to represent the principal. So maybe you are Michigan and you're like, hey, we're going to hire this coach to represent us. He's going to wear the M and the purple colors, and he's our coach. But we don't know everything about this guy. Like, we have asymmetric information. Asymmetric, it means not symmetric, right? Imbalance, right? There's an imbalance of what we know about him. We know what's on his resume. He knows what's in his soul, right? We don't know if he's attracted to the lady in the office. We don't know if he's smoking crack on the weekends, right? So what is when you are when you write the contracts, you have to prevent something else called moral hazard, which is basically like this idea. Pay attention now, that once we sign this deal with this guy, he's going to have a lot of leverage over us, right? If he decides he wants to go and destroy our reputation, he can do that. So the answer to moral hazard, which is a function of asymmetric information, imbalanced information, is what they call optimal contracting. So let me translate that for you. So that means, like, you're making a deal with somebody. When you sign that deal, when you connect to that person, you start that business with that person, you sleep with that person, you marry that person, then you run into the moral hazard risk that if there is something about that person that you did not know, that this is why you investigate before you invest, right? This is why due diligence matters when you make an investment. But even with due diligence, you still have an asymmetric information problem, because you're not gonna find out everything. You don't know every single thing about that person you're gonna marry. But you'd be amazed how many people will sleep with somebody, date somebody, maybe marry somebody. They don't even know their credit score. They don't know. They may not even know about a criminal history, because no background check was done. I'm not saying you should do this. I'm just saying, like, and think about how many horror stories are out there of people who locked in with somebody, again, because of irrational instant gratification. Oh, he cute, girl. Or she's so fine. Did you see that ass on her? Right. Your instant gratification is causing you to skip the whole due diligence process, and you jump into a scenario. So what happens is you get smacked upside the head by the moral hazard issue, which comes from asymmetric information. You didn't know. You thought he was going to be the father of your kids, and you didn't know that he just wanted to have fun with you for the weekend. So what happens is that when you are emotional and you jump right in, he gets what he wants, and then you're calling him saying, hey, when we're going to get back together, and he's like, why would I want to talk to you now? It's very shocking, right? When that happens, that's moral hazard. And moral hazard can be driven by asymmetric information, which actually can be partly prevented by what they call optimal contracting and or due diligence. So the optimal way, the way things are supposed to happen before you make a commitment to another person in a contractual situation, most of us violate this. Most of us don't get it perfect because you're human. You're gonna make mistakes. We've all made these mistakes. I make them. I still make that mistake sometimes because sometimes you can be passionate about something or someone, jump right in, and what happens is as you get older and you get your ass kicked enough, like you, like me, like you realize you've made mistakes enough times. Because I have a lot of intellectual ability, but emotional intelligence was a whole separate set of classes. I had to take those classes separately, and a lot of that came from paying tuition in the school of life. So never mistake intellect with actual emotional intelligence. Those are two separate paths that you have to fulfill. So anyway, so my journey was I kept making mistakes. And then I started learning, like, hold on, boys, you got a blind spot, man. Like you jump into stuff and something sounds good. Somebody spills a good message. You see something that looks good on paper and you commit a little too fast. So just when you feel yourself doing that, pull back a little bit, acknowledge yourself, right? You just pull back and let's not complete let's kind of scrutinize ourselves a little bit, right? Like I know how you're feeling right now and you want to make your move right now, but instead, just in case, take your time and do your due diligence, right? And then diligence, you do some optimal contracting. Like let's get this stuff down on paper. Let's talk about the what ifs. Okay, if this happens, then this. If this happens, then that. And that's the best time to do the contract because everybody's happy, everybody's feeling good, everything is rosy. And then what happens is that if you get in a situation where asymmetric information hits you, like you find out that your partner, the person you married, that they were going to quit their job as soon as they married you because you make all the money, then maybe you have something in the contract that can protect you in that case. That's just an example that just came to my mind. Or maybe you start the business with somebody and then you realize how lazy they are after you've signed the contracts and agreed to split the money with them. I've seen that happen a lot, right? So one thing, just a little tip, is if I do business with somebody, I don't really invest in ideas anymore. I invest in people. And if you get on the phone with me to pitch me a business idea, typically you're somebody that I've seen in action for many years, and I know you enough to know if you're committed to what you are doing. Like, so for example, there's a lady, I don't think she minds me talking about this, but this lady named Juiced Up Reese, and she runs a juice business. And I've been seeing Reese come to our All Black National Convention every year for the last probably 8 years, and she's got a beautiful bubbly spirit. She's really into juicing. Like juicing is her jam. That's just her thing. Every time I see her, there's some juice around, and so she's knee deep in her craft and very good at it. And so when Juiced Up Reese reached out and said, "Hey, would you be interested in investing in this next thing I want to do?" I said, "Yeah, I want to have the conversation because it's you. It's not because juicing. It's not about whether juicing is a good idea. It's whether you're the right person to execute the idea. And that's really important. We overvalue ideas sometimes. Like you can easily think that because you came up with the idea that that is the same as actually executing it. No. If I had the choice between working with a person who can execute a mediocre idea at a high level versus working with somebody who has a great idea, but their execution skills are faulty, I'd rather work with the executor than to work with the non-executor. Do you understand? Does that make sense? A mediocre idea that's well executed will always surpass a great idea that isn't executed. So when people walk around saying, "Yeah, I heard," I think I heard somebody say on the podcast the other day, they said, "Yeah, so and so worked with this company and they came up with the idea to do blah blah blah. So they owe them money and they should owe them money for that." And I'm like, "Yeah, I get it, but could they have executed the idea? The execution's a whole nother level. Again, that's a whole separate class. Coming up with an idea isn't that hard. And you live in the age of artificial intelligence. Ideas are everywhere. But executed ideas are on a whole nother level, right? So anyway, the due diligence piece, I encourage you to do that. And this is something that comes out in this situation with the Michigan coach. So they put in the contract. They said, look, if you get fired because you were out here doing something unethical, we don't owe you nothing. We owe you no money. And that was because they were dealing with the asymmetric problem, asymmetric information issue to prevent moral hazard And they solve that problem through optimal contracting because optimal contracting covers what due diligence does not. Because you can do all the due diligence in the world, but you still don't know everything. There's still asymmetric information. There's still skeletons buried, roaches in the closet, all kinds of things that might change in the future. That's another thing. You don't know what the future holds, right? So ultimately, contracts are important. That's one of the reasons my wife and I, when we got married, we were happy to say, yes, we do have a prenup, not because we plan to get divorced, but because we know divorces happen. And if divorce happens, we want to make sure that it's a smooth transition and not some old messy ghetto traumatizing nonsense. Okay. All right. One more thing that I'll mention here is that a lot of financial theory, there's something, the guy named Gary Becker who came up with human capital theory. And basically, he says that your lifetime earnings are tied to the value of your skills and your choices and your long-term conduct. So effectively, opportunity cost becomes, really clear when your behavior is not in alignment with what you need it to be in order for you to maximize your wealth and maximize your earnings. That's why even if you become really successful and you become really wealthy, never believe anybody that makes you think that because you are famous or powerful, that means you can just go out here and act like an ass, right? I know many famous people who are very wealthy who are just terrible humans, and nobody wants to work with them at all. So they every time someone says no, I don't want to work with you, they lose money, and they lose money because they don't understand that it's not just you having the asset, it's how you manage the asset. The asset might be you, the asset might be your reputation. How do you leverage that? If you leverage it in a nasty way, then you're going to lose a lot of money that way. And that's related to human capital theory from Becker. He was at the University of Chicago. He sent me an email where I emailed him and he emailed me back. He seemed like a nice guy, but I'd never met him. But anyway, with that being said, let's go ahead and finish up for today. I hope this was a helpful conversation, and I wish him the best. I don't enjoy seeing somebody lose everything. I'm sure he worked very hard for his career. I'm sure he'll land on his feet somewhere, but I doubt if he'll get a high profile position like that because jobs like the University of Michigan only come. I mean, that's a hell of a job. That's a big one. That's a real big one. So a couple things, quick reminders. One, you can still get your Black Wealth calendar for 2026, and so if you want to get calendars to give away as Christmas gifts, put them on your refrigerator, things like that. You can go to blackwealthcalendar.com. We can't guarantee that they'll get there before Christmas though, because sometimes things slow up because of all the Christmas rush in mail. But you can still order it now and have it before the new year, most likely. And then number two, I want to remind you also that so you can go to blackwealthcalendar.com. That's the URL. And then also, you may not know that I do have a podcast on Spotify. So if you go to Spotify, look up my name, Boyce Watkins. You can go and check me out there. And I think in a couple of days is where I do that breakdown of various stocks that I was looking at. I think it comes out on the 13th or the 14th, the episode. And if it's already out, you can still probably find it. But anyway, I did on my podcast, the Dr. Boyce Breakdown. I did an hour-long breakdown of what was going on in the stock market. When's my podcast live, Jantre? Actually, it's recorded, and a lot of them are Monday in the morning sessions or other things that I might do. So I don't really do like a live podcast like that. This is as live as it gets. Like so, when you come in the morning, you see me live. And or if you come to class, that's when I'm live. Everything else, I just save it and you can check it out at your convenience. All right. So have a good day, everybody, and don't forget if you want to join this class every morning and get a wake up call, text the word morning to the number 87948. So text morning to 87948, and I will see you all tomorrow. Have a good day, everybody. Oh, and next week I'm going to be actually out of the country, so I may have to cancel a couple of times next week, but I'll always let you know in advance. But yeah, I am doing a little bit of travel.